As the two front pieces that are going either side of the zebra. No zebras allowed in this. Hi, welcome or welcome back. I am Dawn, and this channel is known as Dawn at the Lake. What we do here is we move the needle. It's kind of my hashtag, keep moving the needle. For good reason. I think it's very important for us to just realize that we are making progress, because sometimes we don't have a lot of time in our studio. We can only spend 5 minutes, sometimes it's 20 minutes, but we want 3 hours or the whole day. All those little steps add up and we get to a finish line. So we have some things to talk about today. We've made some great progress on the sleep sack. You may notice only the back is on the design wall. That's because the two front pieces that are going either side of the zebra. No zebras allowed in this zipper. The two front pieces that are going to go on either side of that zipper are actually ones here in front of me getting sandwiched and the other one's on the sewing machine. I'm ready to put some clouds in them. I'm excited to be getting to this place. I'm going to zip through these in no time. In fact, before this video that you're seeing is even published, I'll have that done. And then I get to piece everything together and we'll be making real progress. So there's some notes I've made. I want to go get my computer and have it here in front of me so I can reference the notes I made. There's some few things I want to make sure I say. Before I go on, though, I want to make sure I say thank you to all of you who have been commenting. I did ask in a couple of recent videos that you guys comment because it helps the channel tremendously, especially if you are a typical viewer of other quilting content. If you're watching other quilters and then you watch mine and you like it and comment, that's the big thing is comment, then YouTube then shares my videos out to other people like yourself who are watching other quilting content. Because I've seen my views climb and I really do appreciate that. It helps me tremendously. Puts another $1 or $2 in my pocket and I really appreciate that. Because right now it is just $1 or $2. I'm a very young channel, but I am hoping to grow. With your help, I can. I'm trying to form a community here of like-minded people who love quilt making, love making, and love crafting. Just this idea of all the arts of quilt making. There's just a plethora of things for us to discover yet, and I'm hoping we can do it together. So in the last video, I did tell you guys that I named the quilt The Enchanted Place or The Enchanted Home, and it was after a quote from Winnie the Pooh by A.A. Milne. The sentiment behind that quote just meant a lot to me. It just says that no matter where you are or I am, we're still going to be together. That you're in my heart, I'm in your heart, that kind of thing. And I love the idea for this quilt. Even though this is not a pure quilt, it is a sleep sack. It's basically just a quilt for a baby. Because the baby's not going to hold a quilt around them, right? But you put them in one that's got a zipper and they'll stay in it. That quote just meant a lot to me because I don't get to see my grandbaby enough. Do we ever get to see our grandbabies enough? But it started off with, if ever there is a tomorrow and we're not together, there is something you must always remember. You are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. But the most important thing is, if we are apart, I'll always be with you. So I think that's going to go in a card that I write for her when I give this to her. So she's not going to know. She's 13 months old, right? When she gets this, she'll be 13 months old. She's not going to know. She'll kind of know, right? She's not without thought. But, you know, it's something that her mother can keep for her and keep it with this whenever it gets packaged up and it's saved for her grandbabies or for her babies, if it lasts that long. There are 16 different videos in the playlist for Baby and Me, and that's for the sleep sack. So if you've not seen those, if you want to sit at home and binge something while you're in your studio, I highly recommend it. You're going to see a lot of repetition, you know, because I've said a gazillion times, it's for my grandbaby. She's tall, the pattern was big, it's whimsical. I'm throwing everything but the kitchen sink at it, using improv, just playing. But you know what? There are worse things to binge whenever you're in your studio. It's pretty much the same thing, no big surprises. I've had fun along the way and I hope you have too. So I've been moving the needle on just more than the sleep sack. I've been moving the needle on my skill set and my confidence level too. And I think that's kind of an important thing to remember. When we just let ourselves loose and we play, we build confidence. We learn things. And I haven't gone back to fix all the things that I have goofed and blundered on. I have moved forward so that I can complete a project, get to that next stage and see what it is that I don't know yet about that stage. So I can put a check box next to that item and say, I need to learn this, I need to learn that, I need to learn this. And maybe one day I'll get to go in and put checks inside those boxes. So there's an update before we move on. I am going to be doing a little bit of moving the needle on my education, the Ricky Timms way. He's offering a set of classes, and one of them I'm going to be taking. I want to take the part 2 of it as well, but I only signed up for part 1. Just, cash flow. Only reason that I didn't sign up for both. The second one, I think I still have time to sign up for. I hope I do. Registration for it doesn't expire for a few weeks yet. So what I did is I signed up for locomotion. And whenever I have worked on, where is it? Yeah, these pastures, and I was putting in curves, and when I worked on the pasture lands inside here, and I worked a bunch of curves, I was thinking about Ricky. I remember watching him on the Quilt Show about how he was teaching us, the viewers, and Alex, she probably knows already, and he's already taught her, but how you're kind of using the machine to quickly make those curves, and you got your one hand on the under fabric and one hand on the upper fabric, and you're kind of scissoring them back and forth to get the design that you need. And so I was kind of channeling my Ricky Timms the whole time I was doing those, and I was thinking, I wish I'd actually taken a lesson from him. I got to go back and find that video. And then he started offering classes on doing some curves. So it signed me up. So I did. Signed me up. I'm so excited. So if you're going to be in there too, let me know in the comments. I hope maybe some of you are going to be in that class too. It'd be nice to know. I assume that we're going to be like in a Zoom meeting where we get to see each other too. I hope so. It's all online. It's 9:30 in the morning for 6 different weeks. So I know I've gone very whimsical on this quilt, and you can really see it on the house in particular. I'm not thrilled with the house. It's not exactly the full aesthetic that I was looking for, but it's okay. I know you can probably hear some popping in the background. That's little Betsy trying to eat on one of the boxes I have some fabric stored in. Oh my goodness. So one of the things I decided to do after we've finished one of the last videos is I decided to put my stems on my cotton. I am super happy with how the cotton bowls have turned out. I love the texture. I love the free raw edge to everything. It's just great. I can't wait to see what it looks like as it gets washed and dried over time. I do have a question. I have continually had some slip stitches while I've been doing free motion quilting, and I don't know why that is. Is that a tension issue? I haven't had a chance to look it up, but I was hoping some of you might have a clue and you can help direct me. Can you hear the dogs in the background? They're just having a good time. Okay, I'm going to get my threads picked off the back and then get this trimmed up. I'm a fan. I love it. I think I forgot. I did. I have not done the free motion quilting on the burrs down here. I'm going to do that real quick. And then I cut this fabric on the bias. There's my dogs again. And then I cut this fabric on the bias so I can make my stems. I have one going here, one branching out to here, and then one that sticks up here. Oh, I can't wait. I'm going to do that. And of course I should have put my stems in before I put the cotton bolls on, but I just didn't do that. It doesn't matter. It worked out just fine. I put my stems on, I made my little bias strips, and then I started pinning them on, and they went together just fine. I used a nice little leafy design for my quilting stitch, one of the presets on the sewing machine, and it worked out quite well, I think. I think this may be my first time to use this machine and any of its presets as a quilting stitch, and it worked out quite well, I think. Then, of course, I needed to move on to working on the house. We talked about that in the last video, that I needed to like kind of shift how the roof was setting, which meant I needed to shift actually how the top log was angled. Like it was a little bit wider on the left side. I needed it to be not as wide so that it would sit more squared up, so that the roof itself would not be hanging over to the right so much. So I did all that, and then I put some eaves on it, not as dramatically as I had hoped. I probably should have made those eaves a little bit more pronounced. But that done, it was ready then to make a sandwich out of it. And that's what we did. Made a sandwich, and we got it quilted. Remember, there was some puckering on the road itself that I was kind of concerned about, and I thought, no, I'll just go in there and I'll just attack that area first with my quilting so that it would absorb some of that extra material. And I did do that. I did want to address that first. And you should always start in the center of your quilt and work out so that you're not pulling puckers into the center. If you have any excess fabric that isn't just laid down nice and neat on the backing of your quilt, then that puckering is going to be pushed to the edges, which is much more desirable than having them pushed to the center. So you start in the middle and you work your way out when you can. Sometimes, and I think on a long arm it may be different. I think that's different unless you're doing custom long arm, but I'm a long armer, so don't take any information from me about the long arms. As I was making my quilt sandwich, I was able to get enough tension to the right of that road, taking the edge of the quilt over and pinning it, that I could work out a lot of that puckering. It really wasn't that there was excess fabric, it's just that the curve was pulling it in and creating that puckering. As I was pinning this, I was trying to think of which of my presets on the sewing machine I could use. And I thought, well, okay, I'll use something that gives some definition to the exterior part of the road on both sides. And then I need to do something that makes that gray area to the right of the road look like it's rock. And then I need to do something on the brown area where the ditch is and make it look like it's, just something that has some curve to it like you would have on a ditch. I spent a lot of time quilting, and I'm not thrilled with what I did. I did a little bit of a thread painting and an improv free motion quilting, and it was, kind of looked a little bit helter-skelter, but it's not too bad. When you just grab the quilt and you are touching it and just looking at it, you don't immediately appreciate the fact that it was just done by somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. It is improv. I needed it to be quick and fast, so I did go with the improv, free motion quilting, and just a freestyle altogether. And I needed to lock in some of the areas like around that vignette of the grass. Some of the grass, the points of the grass was already peeling up. I'm not thrilled with that adhesive. The fusible that I used was Pelon 805 Wander Under Interfacing. On everything that I've used it on, maybe I'm just not using it properly, but little edges of it have peeled up. So that tells me that maybe it's not as strong as some of the others. I know a lot of the collage quilters will use Steam-A-Seam too, so I want to get some of that and give that a go too. But again, it may be a user problem. It may not just be the product. I think the biggest obstacle that I was dealing with, that was my handicap, was the fact that I was rushing. I just didn't leave enough time. I did not respect the amount of time it can take. I spent all day just doing the back, and that's with me rushing. I had problems with the machine. I had a squeaky needle, and then I went ahead and cleaned the machine. So that took up a little bit of time, but not a whole lot. Just I had thread that was breaking. There was just a lot of learning curves in there, but the actual quilting part itself, because I was doing it pretty heavily, that just took a little bit of time. And of course, because I did it heavily, it's stiffer than I wish it was. Because I quilted it pretty heavily, it is going to be stiffer than what this is, the original one. This one is nice and fluffy because I used, where is it? This is the wool that's inside of the original sleep sack. And so it's nice and light and fluffy, and I love it. And in my mind, I was making a larger version of this, even though I've quickly figured out that I didn't have enough of this to do that. And I'm barely having enough of the cotton that I'm using. This is the warm white, I believe is what this is called. I'll have to look it up to see if it's not that. But it's a lovely weight, and it's really nice and soft in its own right. It's just not as fluffy as this. But whenever you quilt this heavily, it becomes stiffer because there's a lot of threads there. And so this has a lot of stiffness to it. Now, of course, it's not been washed, and the smaller one, the original one, has been washed a few times. But this one, it's just, right now, it's pretty stiff. And this area right here, where it's got the fusible underneath it, it feels really stiff right there. I really hope that loosens up, because if you think about it, of course, this is the back, but this is going to be probably down near the just above the diaper area. If this is underneath the arms, this is probably going to be just above the diaper. So the low back, you don't want a lot of stiffness there. Surely that's going to become more pliable. But you can see where there's a lot of little points that was on the adhesive. So a lot of those were coming up. So I just went ahead and I stitched over everything. I put the sides, the lumber in for the barn. But this whole vignette just feels, you can probably tell just by me tapping on it. See how this sounds different even. This just sounds stiffer, a little bit more plasticky. Maybe it's some of the fabric. The fabric was from the 90s that came from. I like that we have little leaves coming up off of the tree there. And see, this is, you can see on the side of the road, on either side, I use, it's not really a zigzag stitch. It actually looks like a tire tread. And I use that on the side so it could kind of be like the shoulder of the road. And this fabric really turned out to be pretty decent for a road. I got the truck on. I used that Wander Under for it, and then I went around with a really tiny zigzag. I like to see what you're seeing. Tiny zigzag, and then I filled in the tree. The only green I had was a hand quilting thread, and it was pretty thick. So it's kind of tough on the machine to do it, but it did it. And I kind of like the addition of that. It gives some more depth there. That's what I was looking for. And then I just did a quilting line there and another one down there to put, so that the Iowa, the back of the truck, pops out to try to give a little bit more depth to things there. I love that, and I love that it's got Alabama on it. I just love that. You know, there may be a lot of things in here that I'm not proud of, but I learned from and I had fun doing. But I kind of see this whole thing as kind of like a prototype, that it is a learning lesson, it's a stepping stone, and that's what I'm encouraging you guys to do. It doesn't have to represent your very best effort for it to also be worthwhile and valuable and good and usable and loved. You know, the quilt that my daughter, she called it Blanku her entire childhood, and we still call it that. It was that my grandmother made for my brother that I had, and then my daughter had it. It was just squares. It was just a trip around the world, you know, and it was nothing fancy about it. And it was just tied. It wasn't quilted. You know, you don't have to be perfect. You get something done that can be loved. So where are we now? What is next? Next is working on these sides that are down here in front of me. I'm going to try to put some clouds in. I looked at some different designs. I just put into Google that cloud quilting pantographs, I think is what I put in. I just want to get some ideas, trying to learn, you know, how to do this right. I'm not about to try any of the fancy clouds. I do think I need loose movement in my quilting designs for these two front pieces because they're very rigid. It's just a bunch of rectangles and squares. And so I think curved lines in the quilting and nice and loose, since so much of the rest of it has a lot of stiffness, you know, a lot of stitching. We don't want the entire thing to be like that. Even if this loosens up as it gets washed, we don't want the entire thing to be like that. So I want the front to be nice and pliable. So I'm going to do some more open, very open design. I am a little bit concerned about how the two front sides and the bottom underneath the zipper, when you put those together, just kind of mocking up what they look like after the seam would be taken in, that's still longer than what this piece is. And I don't know why that is. It really shouldn't be, but it's just going to mean that some of it gets cut off on the bottom. Some of this bottom, where our hay bales are, some of that would be cut off probably. I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to try not to butcher the design as I'm having to do that. But you know what? I'm not going to let it bother me. We're going to push on. We're going to play and keep the needle moving. That is the name of this game. You know, when I saw that, I said, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to march on. I'm going to put the truck on. Then I'm going to put the wood on the barn. And then I'm going to start doing the stitching for the two front pieces. I'm going to just march on. I'm going to keep on playing, and that's what I want you guys to do too. Don't be afraid to play. I hope you've enjoyed this series. I'm not done with it yet. I'm getting really close now to being able to piece everything together. And that is actually a multi-step process. It sounds like it'd be super easy, right? Putting the zipper in, because I've only done that like 3 or 4 times in my life, and then stitching this, and then I do a binding over my insides, my seams, and I put my seams on the inside, of course, but I don't want any rough edges and I don't want it fraying. So that takes a little bit of time. You got to go slow because, you know, you're going through a lot of layers with this. So with that, we're going to call it quits, my friends, for today, for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Keep the needle moving and don't forget to play. Thank you so much for being here. See you soon. Bye.